There's absolutely no measure of undermining that piece of legislation. So if you listen to the broader context of the press briefing, which was led by the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF, you contextualize this phenomena in the following way, that there's a lot of splinter parties being created in South Africa, which are smaller, and all of them represent the same interests, which are the interests of the Oppenheimers, and all of them are funded by the same people. But the call for publicizing of political party funding came at the moment when they could see that the Economic Freedom Fighters is able to sustain itself without broader support from the Oppenheimer establishment or international or domestic capital, because the EFF doesn't get support from the likes of people who go around bragging to be sponsoring all of those smaller splinter political parties and forming some sort of moonshot pact. We're a self-sustaining organization. So the legislation itself was created in a means to target and identify the funders of the EFF. But as an organization that believes in transparency, we were never going to stand against such legislation, but we must be able to put it to the fore that it was created to target us. So we are calling on our people and those in the business sector, those who want to support and finance the revolution, to continue to do so in all of the ways that they are doing. And if they have a disinterest of being targeted by the establishment, because the tender system in South Africa operates in such a way where you can be isolated if you are identified to support any certain political party. So business is anxious to support the EFF. So we've given them an avenue to ease their anxiety, and that is to donate to us to an amount where they don't have to expose themselves to the tyranny and blackmailing tactics of an establishment that will victimize them for supporting the revolution of the EFF. So that's all we're saying. If you don't want to be victimized by the state and want to continue to be able to do business in South Africa while supporting the EFF, there's a method. You can SMS a donation, you can donate to us online. Sure. And if you're so scared of being seen, you can donate beyond that, below that threshold. There's nothing wrong with that.
So now, I'm terribly sorry to do this, but I'm sure you'll agree with my next decision. Musa Mota, who has been flying the South African flag very high in the UK, is back in South Africa and he's speaking to the media. But let's resume our discussion now with the EFF spokesperson, Sinawo Thambo, as the party gathers up momentum in the lead up to its 10th anniversary later on this month, I beg your pardon. Sinawo, thanks for your time and indulgence. I'm sure you'll agree that it's important for us to shine a spotlight on the many right things that South Africans are doing, even beyond our borders. But we're still unpacking the rationale behind essentially calling for your donors, the donors of the EFF, to donate less than 100,000 rand. And part of what you said is that the party believes the Political Party Funding Act was put together in a way to try to single out the EFF. What's your response to people who believe that, transparency is actually the bedrock of any functional democracy, and this particular call in some ways undermines that?
Look, I don't think we would agree with that because, of course, we supported the legislation because we do believe in transparency, but that doesn't mean that there was nefarious motives behind the legislation itself, and that's what we're bringing to the fore. That legislation was passed almost 20 years after our democracy. Where was the cause for transparency before the formation of the EFF about who's funding who? So the critical thing that we must know is that there was an interest now in who's funding political parties because the EFF was exhibiting a rapid rise and growth and sustainability without any financing or contributions from dominant capital which sustains the political terrain of South Africa. The African National Congress, the Democratic Alliance, Action SA, and all of these other splinter parties that are being formed to create some sort of mirage that there's multi-party democracy in South Africa in the form of many political parties, are all funded by the same individuals. They all have the same funders. And those funders were curious as to who's sustaining the EFF because we have not accepted their money. They don't want to fund us because we stand for ideals and policy positions that are at odds with sustaining the strength of white monopoly capital in South Africa. So we are saying that those who do want to associate with the EFF who want to avoid the level of victimization, which was the nefarious logic behind the establishment of the legislation itself. It wasn't established for good intents and purposes, are able to donate to the EFF without exposing themselves to whatever they fear the state will do, which of course organizes itself to eliminate and undermine any prospects of sustainability of opposition parties. So that's what we're doing. We're not undermining legislation. We're protecting those who want to be able to sustain the revolution of the EFF without being victimized.